KO Distilling is a craft distillery. I kind of say we're a mid-tier distillery compared to most other craft distilleries. We started out, like most craft distilleries, making clear spirits, both gin and some white whiskey. But soon after that, we started putting up aged whiskey, wheat, rye, and bourbon. And that all started in 2015. Well, when John and I decided we were going to take a look at it, I have to be honest, our vision of what our distillery would be was awful small. We were thinking something in the order of, making whiskey in your garage type of thing. But as we looked more and more into it and talked to a lot of people in the industry, what we found was we needed to get bigger than that. As I said, when we started, we had a 550-gallon pot still. We were doing about 225 barrels a year. But a year into doing that, what we realized is that was not enough. We basically weren't even covering our operating costs if we eventually sold all that whiskey. So we made the decision in 2017 to go big, and we got a second still, a Vendome 30-foot, 10-inch diameter column still. And with that, we produce about 1,000 barrels of whiskey a year. Well, even though we're in the whiskey and gin business, what we're really in is the people business. We realized early on that we needed somebody with expertise in our field to be able to come in here and help us make high quality products. So we sought out and ultimately hired Ryan Hendricks. Ryan has got a bachelor's degree in chemistry from Michigan State University. He also got his master's in chemical engineering. And Ryan worked at Red Cedar Distillery in Michigan and also interned at Jim Beam. So we knew when we hired Ryan that we had somebody that could be with us for a long time to take us from startup to where we are today, which is a mid-tier craft distillery. Well, not too surprisingly, our choice of making spirits boiled down to gin and whiskey. That's because I was a big bourbon fan, and John, my business partner, was a big gin lover. So we started out with those clear spirits, the gin and the white whiskey, but ultimately the biggest decision we ever made was to age whiskey. And honestly, at the time, we had no idea what that really meant. What that meant is you had to put whiskey up, wait years before it was aged. But now we've got really good quality spirit that is 3 to 4 years old. Well, what we found out early in our life was that trademarks were very important. When we first started, we felt strongly the name of our company should include our last name. So our legal name is Karlson and O'Meara Distilleries. So we tried to trademark that so we could put it on all of our bottles. The United States government said, no, you can't use that. It turned out there was a Karlson vodka in Sweden and Karlson with a K like mine, and also an O'Meara liqueur in Ireland. So we didn't know what to do. We looked at Battlefield Distilling as a trade name, but ultimately we went with KO Distilling, which was our initials. In a sideways way, we were looking at brand names for our whiskey, and we said, what kind of goes with KO Distilling? And we came up with the concept of bare knuckle. And we went ahead and trademarked that. So bare knuckle, KO, knockout, we thought that was a good combination. So for the last 6 years, all of our whiskeys have been bare knuckle whiskeys. Each whiskey has its own fighter on the image. Our wheat whiskey has an Irish-American fighter named Jimmy Gardner, who fought over 100 years ago. Our rye whiskey has former world heavyweight champion Jack Johnson, who's the first African-American heavyweight champion. Our bourbon actually has a female fighter. We have Mary Texas Mimi Donovan, who was a bantamweight boxer about 110 years ago. We also have a boxer by the name of Valentine Knockout Brown. He is featured on our Bare Knuckle American whiskey. And finally, we have a fighter by the name of Joe Gans, who was the first African-American world champion ever in boxing. Joe was from nearby Baltimore, Maryland. He's featured in our new High Rye Bourbon. While KO, Bare Knuckle, Knockout, and the fighter images are all very important for us from a branding standpoint, the reason we went in that direction more than anything else is we want to pay tribute to all the spirit lovers out there who are working hard every day through grit, determination, and fortitude. Those folks deserve to be recognized, and we feel like with our spirits we're doing that. Plenty of lessons learned. I think the first one was, and we're living through this every day, is go big or go home. Early on we realized that what we had wasn't big enough and we had to get bigger, and we did scale up. Thank God we did, because had we not done that, I'm not so sure we would be able to survive as a company. So go big, go home was definitely a lesson learned for us. The other lesson that I think we learned is this is a very tough business to get into, especially from a cash flow standpoint. If you get in the whiskey business and you're putting up whiskey and waiting for 4 years before you can harvest those barrels and bottle, it's an unbelievable challenge, and it's one that we totally underestimated, but it seems like those times have come to an end. And as we sell more and more of our spirits, we're getting out of that, and we're moving in the right direction, and we have a very bright future. Another lesson learned is really on the people front. I mentioned Ryan, who's been with us since 2014. His 7-year anniversary will be in December. But we also have several people that have been with us for 4 to 5 years. For us to be a startup and be an effective company after our startup phase, we need people that understand the company, that can do their jobs and help us grow. And as the company grows and we expand into other markets, those people will be key factors in our ability to expand and grow as a company. Well, I think first and foremost, what we offer are craft spirits that are exceptionally high quality, they're reasonably priced. But what's different about us than other distilleries is that when you come here to visit us, you can be part of an experience. It's not just about tasting the spirits. It's about walking around, seeing how we do it, talking to people that make the spirits and understanding more about where these spirits come from. So it's not just us as a manufacturer that's important, but it's also us providing a quality experience for anybody who wants. I'd like to think our first 6 years are the equivalent of what everybody goes through growing up. They go through elementary school, middle school, high school, maybe even college. And I think where we are right now is kind of in our young adult maturation. And we're going to grow into a company that does a lot of things, has spirits in a lot of states. And where we are right now, I think it's a good place to be. I think 5 years from now, we're going to continue to put out high quality spirits, but what will be different is we'll have some spirits that we're putting out that are going to be 3 to 4 years old, but we're going to have an inventory of spirits that are going to be 8 to 10 years old, most of which will come from our column still, which we put up a few years ago. So as a company, we're not a young whiskey company anymore. We're going to be a company that has premier 8, 10-year-old whiskeys that would be a big differentiator.